Mother think I was off to meet with my sewing circle. Charlotte laughed. I won't tell if you won't. Though she and Nell ought not have been there in the first place, in their parents' eyes anyhow, at the start there hardly seemed anything to worry about. The gathering was only meant to be a simple public talk, but the topic was a touchy one. Pennsylvania might be a free state, but that didn't always amount to much. The state legislature was floating a plan to strip free black men of the vote, and to hear Nell tell it, Mr. Purvis was one of the scheme's fiercest critics. That's why the sight of him was such a shock. When the clock struck 11, a tall, slim man with olive-colored skin and deep brown, wavy hair strode across the stage dressed in a finely tailored, deep blue morning jacket with the chain of a gold watch glinting from his breast pocket. Charlotte gasped so sharply at the sight of him that Nell leaned over to ask if she was unwell. She gave a shaky nod in reply, but couldn't stop staring. If Mr. Purvis had taken a notion to pass for white, he'd have fooled most anyone who saw him. But from the very first lines of his speech, it was clear the man's interests didn't run across the color line in that direction. Charlotte listened intently as he held forth for nearly an hour in a voice both elegant and booming, laying into the state legislators who held out their left hand to collect taxes from free black Pennsylvanians, even as their right hand busily drafted more laws that insulted their dignity. The dignity of colored people like me, he declared. Before long, his speech waded into the thick of things, slavery, and what the government owed to the freedmen and fugitive slaves who poured into the city by the hundreds. The audience in the park was rapt. Trouble was, they weren't the only ones listening. Mr. Purvis's words carried on to the sidewalks surrounding the little corner of Washington Square Park, and before long, Charlotte realized that nearly 36 passers-by, all white, mostly men, had slowly filled in around the audience. A handful loomed behind the stage as well, with their hardened, unmoving stares fixed on the man at the podium. Even as they pressed in closer, Nell was too much in her element to notice, constantly leaning over to Charlotte and whispering helpful facts to put the speech in context. Charlotte knew more about the subject of slavery than her genteel friend realized, but far be it from her to deprive Nell of a teaching opportunity. Nell knew her only as a housemaid, and that made their keeping company strange enough without bringing up the small matter of Charlotte's also being a runaway slave. As Purvis drilled in on making the city safe for abolitionists and the fugitives forced into the shadows by fear, Charlotte's mouth went dry. She suddenly felt sure that everyone could tell that she was marked. Was the earthy musk of the plantation cabin's hard dirt floors still hanging on her skin, even after these years away? Could people spy a house slave's stooped back and shuffling steps in her walk? And in the shape of her utterly plain garments, Charlotte could almost trace the pattern of a slave's linen rags. How easily must everyone else see it? Her cheeks burned, but she hardly had time to stew in her shame, because when Mr. Purvis reached the section of his speech calling for the legislature to punish rogue slave catchers, his words were a spark on a pile of dried leaves. The white men's agitated murmurs picked up until finally someone snarled, "Shut your mouth, you high yellow son of a bitch!" Mr. Purvis put up his hands and called for calm, but not a second later, a sharp gray rock hit him square in the shoulder, and another only narrowly missed his head. He stumbled back as a gang of white men rushed in toward the stage and the crowd alike. The mob started to grab black men from the outer rows of the audience and beat them mercilessly, raining down blows with fists and folding chairs. Charlotte and Nell, frozen in their seats, looked at each other. They were women, but no less black, and mobs weren't in the habit of making distinctions. They had to get away. Now. They scrambled up and ran. In the rush, Charlotte tripped and smacked her face on the leg of an overturned chair. The sharp pain pierced deep into her cheekbone, throbbing even as she and Nell...